Hi. Well, we are in British Columbia, and British Columbia is a wonderful place, but it has a government that insists on surprising us with new laws and new events. And just in this last year, we had short-term rental laws and the Airbnb and new flipping laws. But the big one coming up is really that as of June 30th, we have a multiplex world possible on a variety of lots, and a lot of confusion, a lot of questions, but also a lot of opportunities. And to clarify our thinking and lift the fog from our heads, we are really pleased to have with us Bill Laidler, who is the president of Laidler Academy. He is a real estate agent turned multi-family developer in just 7 years, so he learned it really, really fast. And he was one of Remax Western Canada top 5 agents between 2013 and 2020. He leveraged his commission to get over 20 rental properties with development potential. I guess that's where he got the excitement going on the development side, and he specializes now in finding opportunities, in evaluating properties and negotiating transactions. And his first multi-family development project, Sitka House, was an 88-unit wood frame condo building. It's now under construction, will be finished in spring next year, and he has some 400 additional units in various stages of development. So we are very pleased to welcome Bill Laidler.
Thank you, Ozzie. And through that growth in my career, I've heard about you, I've read your content, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today.
Well, great. Now, there are these new mandates. What are the 3 provincial housing mandates that were adopted in December and that are coming into law at June 30th?
December 2023, the province announced 3 housing mandates. First, to allow for condos within 800 meters of 104 bus exchanges, West Coast Express, and SkyTrain stations to densify around our existing infrastructure. Secondly, the province mandated that every city that has an urban containment boundary, and Metro Vancouver has an urban containment boundary, would allow for a minimum of between 3 and 6 units on single-family properties larger than 3,000 square feet. Finally, a third bill was announced as a new tool for cities to charge amenity cost charges, which would be the city's way to collect fees to pay for future growth, including rec centers, libraries, and other supportive services to accommodate for this new growth.
Kind of interesting. So a lot of new changes, lots of opportunities, but certainly also a lot of new costs that have been found. So where are we in this timeline? I mean, it's June 30th, it's just around the corner. It's now, today is May 22nd.
Over the last 6 months, we've seen different cities adopt the provincial mandates in different ways. Each city has until June 30th to update their zoning bylaws to reflect these new multiplexes or these new 3 to 6 units per single family property. And we've seen a range of different approaches from different cities, like the North Vancouver district and West Vancouver, which are looking at this with very limited scope and working to apply a number of exclusions, all the way to Burnaby, who are fully embracing the recommendations by the province and going above and beyond some of the requirements that the province has made for cities to implement these changes.
Now let me understand this. So I have a lot, an old city lot, 33 by 100. You know, the Vancouver special, we used to put it on. That's 3,300 square feet. I can put now on any such lot a 3-plex on it?
Yeah, I would qualify for a 4-plex if it was a 33-foot lot under the provincial mandates.
A 4-plex. So let's say we have a neighborhood on the west side. Let me just be a little devil's advocate here. And we are in a nice little cul-de-sac. We are all sitting in $2 million houses. And then I come along, buy maybe a 50-foot lot and put a 6-plex on it. That's legal now.
Yes, depending on certain characteristics as per the zoning bylaw, but essentially the province has said that there's 3 units minimum for every property across the province, 4 units for the majority of properties, and then 6 units for any property that's within 400 meters of a frequent transit network bus stop.
That bus stop, I mean, how do they measure what is a good bus stop?
The frequent transit network is defined as a bus that runs every 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
including weekends. So there's,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so it's somewhat arbitrary. For example, in Coquitlam, there's no frequent transit networks that move through the middle. However, you do have some in Port Moody come along the highway number 7. So you have to look for those well-defined frequent transit network routes. And the province has also said that as bus service increases over time, cities will have to update their zoning bylaws to reflect the new bus stops that change into the future.
Well, this is a huge change. I mean, if I owned a residential property, all of a sudden, I qualify to put on a mini high rise or certainly a sixplex, and there's all sorts of requirements and details and so on. But what is the province trying to achieve but because it's a law throughout the province on all communities 5,000 or plus, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a mandate by the province for the cities to implement. And the province put forward a policy paper by the University of British Columbia, citing New Zealand as an example. And New Zealand went through a very similar change a number of years ago. And what they found in New Zealand was the average price point of homes decreased with these changes, allowing for more of the missing middle type homes, which are meant for families with a front door, a garage or a parking pad, some ground space, rather than having condos with no missing middle and single family homes with nothing in between, or very limited options in between.
So we seem to go around the world as a province to looking for solutions, and we salute the government looking for solutions. But what does this mean for the property owners and values then?
Well, it's unclear exactly what's going to happen to values, but taking examples of some of the multiplex zones that have been in place over the last 5 years, and Coquitlam has an area in Millardville where they've been allowing fourplexes, and Vancouver adopted their multiplex zoning bylaw in December of last year. We have seen a bump in values in those limited test cases for specific properties. But because every property is all changing at once, the supply of these opportunities is so high that it's unclear how much demand or how many builders and developers are going to be able to absorb that supply, which will likely have less pricing pressure on the detached homes currently in the short term.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Victoria introduced last year such a law to help the middle. And in 6 months, not a single application was received because it wasn't clear the ceiling heights were supposed to be 9 feet or some outlandish little rules and regulations. Parking was always a big question. What do I have to supply? And so people didn't do it. So the key is really the devil is in the details. And really it needs an expert like yourself to go through it all and figure out, what is going to happen in all of that. How do the municipalities in general, other than you just mentioned Burnaby and places, how do they feel about this edict? Because it really applies to some very small communities.
It's hard to speak for each municipality, but Vancouver's been ahead of it. They adopted their multiplex zoning bylaw in September of last year. And Burnaby seems to have implemented all of the major suggestions put forward by the province. Coquitlam this morning has put forward their recommendations to their mayor and council for direction on how to move forward, either to follow the provincial recommendations or to limit the size of the multiplexes under what they're branding as a Coquitlam zone, which will have smaller multiplexes in their communities. And it's hard to balance. We want more housing, but where is the right place for this housing? And is there a need for some established single-family neighborhoods, or should every neighborhood have this mix of housing? And that's where it's less defined, and especially when it comes to upgrading existing services and how these new multiplexes are going to be realistically built with limited parking and older established neighborhoods.
Yeah, and the word is also established neighborhoods. You spend all your life wanting to live in a certain area, you have this Canadian feel, and all of a sudden you have a mixture of all things going on. I understand that Burnaby is also looking for an extra height, or maybe another unit on some of their applications.
Burnaby's allowing for up to 4 stories in their zoning bylaw. And What's important to note is there's two parts to this. There is the zoning bylaw that allows for what can be built under the zone, but the province still allows for the cities to go through a development permit approval process, which requires one vote with mayor and council following development permit or design guidelines. And the development permit guidelines is what we haven't seen yet. When you talk about the devils being in the details, that will have a big effect on what the opportunities are for these multiplexes.
Well, and that's such a crucial thing, and you pointed that out to our real estate action group. That is really the fourth housing mandate is Bill 16, which seems to have been introduced quietly in early April, and there's some real teeth in that thing that could really skip almost anything that you had planned or help it, but likely not.
The fourth housing mandate, Bill 16, as was identified by the Coquitlam staff, provides additional opportunities to require off-site servicing upgrades for each multiplex. And what that's looking at is what is the existing capacity of the sewer systems, of the water lines, and will these additional units require an upgrade to the entire street connecting down to the main line? Bill 16 provides more flexibility for cities to require these offsite service upgrades. And it may be to the case that the city can look to changing it all the way up until the building permit stage, well past land acquisition, completely changing the pro forma.
So that is, to me, that is the sleeper, that nobody talks about. I mean, so I buy a piece of land. I have the provincial rules and the guidelines, and I study everything. Great, and I pay for it. The land, I get architects and hire lawyers, and I'm ready to go. I'm going to go for my apply for my building permit. The city says, "What? Yeah, we'll approve it, but here's a $200,000 off-site thing." Like the off-site could be anything that the city feels it requires, and the cities have a lot of demand right now. When we look at the studies have shown that in Vancouver, an average condo that is being built, just under 28% of the cost is all government, deep, long time periods and permits and so on. So this Bill 16 is a real sleeper. You have to absolutely, but what do you suggest? Do we go to the planning department and say, hey, what is pending?
Well, that's exactly what we'll have to do, and we'll have to do it at a deep level. And it's really going to increase the importance of having a strong consulting team, and most specifically your civil engineer that has experience in the city that you're looking to develop, and ideally has done projects in the neighboring streets or in that immediate area.
Yeah, because I think what we average people, I mean, I like to buy and sell real estate. I'm not a developer. I like it when it's done, but we got to coordinate hydro and the city and the municipal bylaws, and all that has to be somehow on the same timeline, because if hydro takes 6 months to make a specific recommendation, and then we got to go to the city. I mean, do you supervise things like that, or?
We've been involved, and in my first project when I was 28, I purchased a $20 million piece of development land in Burke Mountain, and that's where I got my first major sting, was working through the servicing upgrades and some of the requirements that were introduced by BC Hydros and how it had effects on the timeline, especially with commercial loans that are on a shorter term. There was a lot of pain and a big learning experience from that opportunity that we're now taking a lot more caution into future projects to ensure that we know exactly what the requirements, or to the best of our ability, what the requirements are going to be before we purchase or commit to purchasing the land.
Well, that's absolutely vital. It's absolutely vital. I mean, here I did everything right, which seems to be the thing that we have to watch out for. I did everything right. I looked at the official community plan. I look at the government and the province and my suburb. And then I understand there are examples out there. Let's say the city votes, we need a $2 million extension of XYZ offsite services. And they say to you, we can't do that until we have that. Well, you were building a sixplex, you're not going to make $2 million. So what that means is that you're committed, your loan is there, and now you have to wait till a big boy next door comes who builds enough and can pay that $2 million. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened with a client that was building the Canby Phase 3, a small 6-unit site, and was requested to upgrade the entire storm line. for the entire street that had something in the millions of dollars of cost, was not able for him to move forward, and he had to wait for a larger site to develop that he could tap into that infrastructure.
Well, that's it. It's like I'm always, we seem to be always on the government, on our radio show, we talk about taxes and this and that. But that's part of the problem is, of course, the municipality, the council, they sit together and they plan something. And then the province says, yeah, but you can't do that, you can do that, and you cannot do this. And then everything has to somehow work together. And yet it's always in the details in the end. They have to be declared, right? Look at all the people that bought short-term rental properties, totally legally, all permitted, good guys and gals. Some of them made it their retirement home. It was a perfectly good thing. Government says, you're a bad person, you got to close them down. So as of May 1, a lot of them put their properties on for sale. What do we have now? A glut of real estate across the land. I presume that in the government, in the secret case, they're like that, because that should maybe have an impact on the prices overall. But what we're doing is the person that's innovative and wants to actually add value and add buildings is put before decisions that really shouldn't be his to make. So what should a homeowner look out for if they are developing a multiplex?
Well, specifically, it's your consulting team that's going to take you a majority of the way there. So the experienced project managers, architects, civil engineers who have the experience in the cities that you're working will be your best place to reduce the risk. And it's a difficult problem because on one hand, we do have the developers and we're looking to add housing units. But you also have to appreciate where the cities are coming from in Metro Vancouver, who are going to own the services and have to maintain the services into the future. It's hard to see which one goes first. Do we have to build the services first, then the housing, or the housing first and then the services? And it's hard to imagine another way where developers can come in and build with the province upgrading all of the service for the entire city. So I understand the tug of war of what goes first, what goes second, and it's really a function of the public owning the infrastructure that makes this almost like a public-private partnership when we're bringing housing to the market.
Well, the other thing is I was listening to there's a story about the Burnaby municipality. I mean, at a civic meeting, one of the councillors actually asked, how come the private developer can build a condo for $600 a foot, and in Burnaby we seem to be paying $1,200 a foot, So and I don't know what the details are, but there is this frustration that the levels of interest, the levels of government inside the government, every department almost wants to have a piece of this to make sure that they're funded and so on. And you, as an outsider, as a developer, you scratch your head. We know a developer that went to a small town in British Columbia, paid $22 million for a piece of property, and then is told you can no longer have a short-term rental, in which 30 to 40% of the buyers normally are an investor. In fact, we seem to be saying to the investor, go away. If I was the government, I'm not advocating this, but I would let them build it first and then tax them and then scare them to death. But to scare them to death before it's even built has an opposite effect. And we have in Surrey alone, we have 3,500 units in a pre-sale stage right now competing for buyers. And they're not all going to be homeowners. And yet we're saying to the investors, federal government's going to take 40%, BC government takes 20% of flipping taxes, and we have 5% GST and 2.5%. Hello, in my newsletter, I wrote about Alberta this yesterday. And the point is that the taxes, there's no property transfer tax, no sales tax. The taxes are so much lower on almost everything. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And is it any wonder that British Columbians are on the way to Alberta? Okay, what do you as Laidler offer in relation to multiplex?
We have a number of different ways that we can be involved. So first, we specialize in working with realtors who focus on properties with development potential. So if there's a homeowner who's looking to either buy, or investor, builder, developer that's looking to buy a multiplex property, we can work with our agents to select the right properties and take advantage of our feasibility studies in terms of where to purchase and where the best opportunities are going to be. Secondly, if you're a home,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Secondly, as a homeowner, the agents are also well suited to market the properties to the development community to ensure that the properties are exposed to the end users, the investors, and the developers, give them a highest likelihood of a strong result. We also have a service where the homeowners can enter into joint venture partnerships with the builders if they'd like to participate in the equity growth through the development stage.
Those feasibility studies, what do they comprise of? The likelihood of approval?
Yeah, well, so there's three main phases. The first is a high level review of the property and the location and what the revenue potential is, so that we can advise the homeowner whether this is a realistic opportunity to move forward with or not. Then secondly, we can take it one step further where we help get the civil engineer and the architect to do initial reviews to confirm what the initial assumptions are. And then finally, the full feasibility study, which would include building out the pro forma, the profit margins, and looking into the unit mix and unit design.
Well, that seems like it's almost a must for any homeowner that wants to go into that venture. I have a hobby horse too, that I think that as a homeowner, we still in Canada mostly get our capital gains free if I make it. And I'm always wondering if I have a residence now, let's say most people all over Canada don't make 200,000 capital gains. But in Vancouver, you might have gone to the west side and paid 600,000. It's now worth 2.2 million. So now I have $1,600,000 profit. And I said, okay, I'm going to tear it down. It's old anyways, and I put a sixplex on it. What happens to my capital gains free?
It's business income.
Yeah, the devil is in the details. You could say, well, maybe I should sell the house first, or maybe I should sell it to my brother Tricker. You know, there's all of these things that now an individual has to wrestle with that wasn't his intention, nor the government's, I would think, because the government wants to build a sixplex. We need more housing. Okay, as a homeowner, that's what I want to do. But for instance, the city has been arguing forever that we should be building laneway houses. And the problems throughout Vancouver, when you build a laneway house, you had huge regulations on parking. You know, I have one particular friend of mine who is on West 12th in that area. And the regulations on what the actual laneway house, by building it, put on his whole house in terms of, does he have a car allowed, his son, or whoever. The point is the things that you don't think about. What I think people never think about, you built that laneway house, cost you $60,000 in permits, then maybe $400,000 or $500,000 to build it, to make $3,500 income. And then if you're on a 33-foot lot, a third of that footprint that is now earning income, you lose that in the capital gains exemption. And so I think, why am I doing this? You know, so I sometimes say to government, okay, we are willing, but you've got to think this way through. What is an individual's position going to be in there? And that's why I think people need somebody like you that sits down and say, no, these are the steps you might have to go through, and this is what you might have to face, not forgetting Bill 16. So how can they learn more than that? Is that learning more? Is that a study that they commission from you, or can they take a course from you? Or?
Yeah, we have a variety of ways to work together. That first initial feasibility would be free through any of our realtor partners. And if you're looking to go into the second or third phases, then we have a service that you can engage us on more formally. For anyone who wants to learn how to develop a multiplex, we launched a multiplex intensive, which is a 6-week training course starting in June. That will walk you through the strategy for acquiring a site, analyzing the feasibility, working through the city application process, and finishing with a full development permit application and an opportunity to work with some of the investors that are looking to invest into the projects that we have worked with in the past.
Well, that sounds exciting. And so how long a course is that?
It's once a week for 6 weeks. We did essentially fill it through our campaign over the last couple of weeks, but we will be looking to launch new courses in the fall of this year. So for anybody who's interested, you can go to LaidlerAcademy.com and you can submit your interest.
Yeah, and certainly anybody that sees this on video, we have the contact information. Bill has given me a phone number and the email that you can send. And I would urge you, if you have just the slightest interest in looking at your home and saying, how could I maybe better myself and my family and build a 3-plex or a 4-plex, and understanding all the rules, but also the steps that you have to go through, I would certainly, if I was in that business, the first thing I would do is get some more education. I'm surprised you don't have any gray hair, Bill. I mean, I think anybody who lists all these regulations.
I have a few coming through. I have a few coming through.
So the realtors you work with, how does it affect their business?
Well, it's really intensified the need for development knowledge from real estate agents. It's essentially moved every residential realtor into a quasi-commercial realtor, where we have to understand how to price properties two ways. One, to an end user who's going to appreciate moving into the home and having their family live in the property. And secondly, looking at the residual land pro forma. If we were going to sell this to a developer, what would the revenue be? What's their estimated hard costs, soft costs, financing costs, profit margin, and the residual land value, so that we can put it out to the entire market and we can know whether we're underpricing it, if there's more profit margin there, or if there's not enough profit margin there to continue marketing it to the end users, as that's still the highest and best use.
Now, you said that quickly, but you just talked about a major kind of an undertaking, really, that has to look at all different aspects. And I'm always thinking Vancouver, okay, suburbs, okay, but what about a small community of 10,000 people? Who's going to do the analysis for on the other side, on the city side? Who has the qualified personnel? Who coordinates with hydro and all the departmental services and the planning and all this? They're doing a lot of it now, but this is brand new. And the law is, as I understand it, is sort of by the end of 2025, they all have to toe the line.
Well, the official community plans need to be updated by December 31st of 2025. That will fill in the gaps between the multiplexes and the condo development, because it created a new challenge, which was what was missing between the province announcements allowing for multiplexes and condos, was we essentially eliminated a lot of our traditional townhome and 6-story wood frame designated land, which is an important part of the housing spectrum. And the cities will need to look at where they're best suited for those opportunities between now and December 2025. And that also will be one of the best opportunities for investors to invest into if they're forward looking and they can see which opportunities may have an OCP update or a land use change between now and 2025.
Well, the interesting thing is that as an investor, I would have thought this is a heck of an opportunity. But then Bill 16 comes along and said, well, if I buy something now, even with a group of people that are well heeled, and I go right up to the permit stage before I really know what the offsite requirements are, because maybe many of those cities don't even know that right now, right? They haven't, they have till the end of 2025, and particularly the smaller communities. Anyways, that's why we keep saying the devil is in the details. And so what types of projects are you focusing on right now?
So we have our 6-story condo building, Sitka House, under construction. We have another 200-unit mid-rise seniors housing continuum of care, and a number of other projects that are in that similar business model. However, our main focus, working with the 20 realtors, small investors, and builders that are part of the Multiplex Intensive, is to acquire 10 sites, either through a joint venture partnership with the homeowner or to acquire completely. And that's where our focus is. So we're looking for any homeowner who is looking to sell their property or be part of the development potential to be in touch with us, and we can walk you through the feasibility steps and use their property as a training aid to this initial release that we're doing for the first time in June.
Well, it looks to me like that is a huge area to be coming, right? It's a huge area to be growing, to have to understand growth is necessary. We have huge inward migration nationally and provincially. We are the desired mecca to live in, right? And so we need to create more housing. There's no question about it. Everybody agrees. Government says we need affordability. But then, okay, I want to do this, but then I'm stuck with all of the things that I hadn't even thought about. Okay, I want to build a 3-plex, 4-plex, 6-plex. The valuation alone of the properties. What about I now have, there's 3 residential properties and the third one becomes a 6-plex. It's now a commercial property that has commercial valuation, I presume. How does that affect the residentials that are around the area? Do they come down in value or do they go up in value?
Well, whether the BC assessments may go up, because the BC assessments are based on the most recent sales in the neighborhood and typically taxed at highest and best use. So it may have some effect on taxes, but will that translate directly into the marketplace? It's not clear. There's so much being changed at once that it may not push the land values. But I will say, and especially in response to the uncertainty with Bill 16 and the offsite servicing, it has created a more complicated development process, but it doesn't mean that there's no opportunities. And what may happen is it may scare many people off from developing, which will create a greater opportunity for those who do have the right consulting team and are able to strategically pick the right locations to build this housing.
That makes a lot of sense, because that's usually what happens. You know, as a human being, as human beings that are buyers and sellers, we always rush into the market when it's hot at the top, and we wrestle each other to the ground with the owner, and then pay 100,000 more than it's worth. And we think that's a good market. And at the same time, and I just said that the other day at an event, that when there is a lot more product, like right now, listings are soaring right across Canada, buyers actually back off and say, market is not good. Well, this should be a market to look at. And your point earlier that this new world that is being created about the new opportunities, there may be so many of them that very many people also back off. And those that continue might just find and get the rewards. But I tell you, you have to be strong and well-heeled and very powerful about your future, because I would say that some governments themselves don't yet know exactly how it comes down. I understand that West Vancouver made an application where only 1.4% of its lots would actually qualify. Will the province agree to that?
I've only heard rumors, and we're supposed to hear fairly soon, but it's not a very ambitious undertaking of the mandates.
Yeah, I mean, if the province were to agree to that, then the whole thing, you know, you'd have to get out of business. So clearly, the details are still to come, and we are very pleased that you've taken the time to shine the light on what is a very interesting subject. Just for the people that listen to us on podcast, can you sort of spell us the email that you want them to go to? And again, if you, for some reason, don't have a pen, you can always go to info@ozbuzz.com and get the information there. But Bill, can you just help us out there?
The email address is bill@thelaidlergroup.com. Thelaidlergroup.com. Laidler spelled Laidler.
Thank you very much, Bill, and thanks for taking the time. And you know, if I ever have the opportunity to look at a lot, and I'd be the first one sitting in the front row with a lifted pen to take your course. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ozzie. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.